I have a weird relationship when it comes to self-respect or respect in general, right? And with my lack of attention towards that detail, sometimes I get triggered by certain things that people say, which is not even which at that point is not even something that someone does to irritate me or someone does to disrespect me. It could be anything that, as light, or it could be anything as light and meaningless as a passive comment about something or part of my character or part of my personality or something that I did without there being any attack or insult in there. And then I would just flip off. And with that I would react in a very passive aggressive manner. Or I would mumble something of of that effect to myself and then regard that as me expressing that emotion, getting my word across. I do that often. I do that very often. Um, it's an issue that can be tackled. It's an issue that requires um, a lot of work, to be honest. A lot of self acceptance, a lot of quieting down to really understand what's up and what should be done. Yeah, I started a journal. I started a journal to help me have a clearer conversation between myself and my inner thoughts, my inner emotions, my inner drives, subconscious communication I have with myself when I'm unconscious, when I'm asleep. Um, the information that I get from the universe, from my higher self, and in the few instances that I have recorded myself, figured out that I deal with a lot of shame as a person, and I deal with a lot of self um, self mutilation, not physical, but a lot of self mutilation, and and without like a clear analysis in that, I find myself blaming people who are around me, and I found myself creating arguments out of situations that are you know very baseline. I often have this unstable nature about having a very unstable way of dealing of going about maneuvering conversations and interactions. To combat that, I've been watching for the past few days. I've been watching very erotic movies, not like porn, not like Pornhub. Let me just like disclaimer, like erotic movies, like movies that deal with a lot of eroticism and um and they've been an eye opener. This specific movie that the lesson that I watched. The last one that I watched was Nymphomaniac, the two volumes of Nymphomaniac. It's a very crazy movie. It's a very psychological, very philosophical movie that deals with topics like shame, topics like self doubt, topics like self punishment, topics like um, it borders on the line of self-preservation, but which can be easily misconstrued as social abandonment and responsibility abandonment, also like familial abandonment. Aside from the um, obvious graphic nature of it, if you have seen it, you understand what I mean when I say graphic nature of it. The conversations between I forgot the main character's name, the lady. I forgot the lady character's name, and the guy who she was talking to, the older the older gentleman. But the conversations were very illustrious. The conversations were very thoughtful for someone like me, because I'm someone who is very open to the depraved parts of human society. I'm someone who's very open to the very um, some things that are seen as social taboos. I am very open to understanding them. That's why I gave myself time to watch these things. There's one that I watched a few. I think I watched in the space of 2 or 3 days. I watched like 5 or 6 of them. But that one, the one that I watched recently, yeah, this one, Infomaniac, that was the most philosophical one. That was the most psychological one for me, and eye opening, because it creates these comparatives between um intel like intellectual thinking, academic thinking, philosophical thinking, and ties it to like nymphomania, and it crosses the line, or like it blends both of them. And for me, it kind of like embellished a lot of it kind of embellished over a lot of parts of myself that I thought were very mutually exclusive. No, mutually exclusive. I don't know if I'm using the term correctly, because this term always befuddles me. I always find myself wondering if I'm using the terms correctly. But they don't. I always thought those parts of me don't go hand in hand, like the thoughts of me being a depraved and depraved in like most things, not like just if you're following the topic, it was like sexual, but like in my thoughts about religion and life and death and sadism and masochism and vulgarity and all of these things that other people can find as taboo, which for me I always look at from a point where I understand. I might not indulge. I don't think I will. I will. I don't think I will indulge in all of them. There's some where my mind sees me indulging in, but then it's always like I always found like the first exchange between the female lead and the male lead, when she said that her actions were sinful and she should be punished, and then the male lead, who represents the intellectual thought, the intellectual thinker, who said, um, well, is the intellectual slash uh, uh, gnostic individual, who's more um, who looks at life more in a intellectual and logic sense than in a faith based paradigm, says that there's no sin in that. Why would you attribute parts of your individuality into sin? And he articulated that very well, in that There's even the point that they made that like all beings are sexual. I would piggyback on that with a quote that I once heard, that everything that humans are capable, everything that a human being does is a human being act. Meaning, whatever act that a human being is possible of doing, however you may scale it, good or bad, negative, good or bad, depraved, or so, either socially or socially accepted, or the contrary, or you know, like in the spectrum of all human actions and thoughts, they are given validation because they come from a human train of thought. I'm not gonna go into detail because if I go into detail, I might um, say some things that might not be very colorful, to say the least. So it bring while watching these movies that cover these topics such as shame a lot, shame, spiritual guilt, and character analysis, which is like the I think one of the main overarching topics that were discussed in most of these films. It had me thinking back to myself when I internalized and began to identify mentally with these films. I found myself just again creating these parallels between the intellectual in me and the quote unquote barbaric in me, the civilized in me and the uncivilized, the good in me and the evil in me, the acceptable and the unacceptable in me. I had to find the parallels in that, and I did. They helped me gain a higher level of respect. Not a, I can't say. Let me rephrase. Let me reiterate. Not a higher level of respect, but it gave it opened a door that suggests that okay, there is a sort of respect in who I am. There is a sort of space that I can um, exchange with. There's a sort of space that I can interact with, that I can identify with, without feeling as if I am I am apart from nature of life or the nature of man, because nature of man is as expensive as the mind of man. There are statutes. I believe there are statutes to each and every extreme, but at the same and at the same not but and at the same time there are thresholds. Yeah, there's thresholds to which something can be expressed. I think that's the main thing I learned, that a human being cannot blame themselves or cannot crucify themselves constantly for how they are, just because it might be seen as something different. That's my personal belief, or that's what I'm growing in understanding. And with that, I think I learned to respect myself more. I learned to divulge these certain parts of me and find a more, like in a game there's this thing called a skill tree. It's called a skill tree, where like you're given attributes, right? right? And then you're given attributes like, okay, I'm a shooter, my gun, I have a base gun, right? Or I have a base skill. I can jump upwards. I can jump upwards a space of a meter, right? I can jump a meter. Then as I go into the game and get more experience points, I get a skill tree. And then in the skill tree, I can add my attributes. Now I can jump 2 meters. Now I can jump forwards and backwards. Now I can do a double jump. And it expresses more of the character's ability and the character's full on personality to indulge, to not to indulge, but to further maneuver in the game. So I think that's what I'm getting at right now. And it's exciting to understand. It's exciting to come to a point where I can be like, all right, cool. I have these parts of me that I thought have to be punished, that I thought have are sinful, that I thought were depraved, that I thought were whatever, whatever. And in my shame of them, that shame, in my shame of them, that mentality dimmed other parts of me that were not like that. But in my seeing those parts of me that are quote unquote unacceptable socially, I can be like, no, those make up my skill tree. And I use all of these things to maneuver. If I do not give light to each part of my being, to this kaleidoscope that is my being, then that is more of a disservice. That is more of a sin for me personally. I believe it's more of a sin to hammer hammer down or break down parts of yourself than it is to accept them and acknowledge them as being part of who you are, and figuring out that even though I have these parts of me that are quote unquote messed up, they are balanced by these other parts of me that are quote unquote good and righteous. It's a balancing act, and understanding all these variables helps. So the self-respect part also goes with that. Thank you.